I'm Sarah Hinches, and today we are going to do a series on the hands and knees and lying on our backs. And this is going to be a nice, gentle series, and we'll have a little bit of restorative yoga in it as well. So this is a series that you can do at the end of a workout, at the end of a yoga workout, or after doing a more intense workout or going for a walk or something like that. But this is also something that you can do without a big warm-up, because we will be doing some warm-up movements. But again, I do always recommend maybe doing a little bit of a warm-up, because you can always get a little bit more out of deeper stretches in yoga with more of a warm-up. So, see what feels good to you. You're going to need a blanket for this practice. So any blanket will do. We're going to be folding it a couple of different ways. You can see my folding here. So we can start with that blanket, just kind of fold it like so, and then fold it one more time. And so this is a nice addition to have for seated yoga as well. You can sit on that, and that's going to raise the hips a little bit and make that more comfortable. But we're also going to use it for several things in our practice today. So for now, we're going to set that to the side, unless you would like to use it underneath your knees for some padding. Another option is to just give your yoga mat a little bit of a fold and to use that as padding for your knees. So when you're ready, we're going to come to our hands and knees, again, with or without the blanket for padding or the mat with extra padding. We want our knees right underneath our hips and our hands right underneath our shoulders. And we're just going to move around a little bit here. If this is too much for the hands and wrists, we have what we call the fist for wrist option, or you can also come down onto your elbows. On the elbows, that restricts the range of motion a little bit, but that's a good option if you like. So again, hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips. We're moving the head, the neck, the shoulders, the rib cage, the spine, the hips, the glutes, and just taking a moment as witness, not as judge or observer, not critic, to just see how you feel here, to find any tension or tightness that you might have in any part of the body. And again, just recognizing that, moving through it, and bringing that breath, nice deep inhales and exhales, in through the nose, out through the nose. And then we're going to come back to that neutral position, lengthening from the tailbone to the top of the head to do a few cat and cows. When we're ready, we're going to inhale, arch the back, look up, and then exhale, round the back spine toward the ceiling. So again, we inhale, arch, we bring the head and the tail up, and then we exhale, round, pull the belly button up, the spine toward the ceiling. As we do this, we want to keep the shoulders low so they're away from the ears. And again, use that breath to guide our movement in through the nose. Exhale out through the nose, finding that spinal flexibility. Let's do a couple more like that. And then we're going to find that neutral spine again, lengthening out, tailbone to the top of the head. Again, let the shoulders relax, make some space between the ears and the shoulders. Look at the floor just ahead of your mat to keep the head and neck nice and long. We're going to inhale and lengthen here. And then as we exhale, we're going to turn and look over the shoulder and hip. Again, we inhale and lengthen center. And then we exhale and turn and look over the shoulder and hip. We're going to continue to flow that here. And really take advantage of that full inhale as well as the full exhale. There's no reason that we need to rush any of these movements. As we continue, we have the option to bring one arm across and press down and back with the exhale. Again, inhale, lengthen. We also have the option to breathe and bring both hands over to the side. Feel that stretch down the opposite side. So again, those are just options and variations. You can take them or leave them as we continue to flow a couple more times each side. You can stay with my pace on these movements, or you can go at your own pace. About one more time each side. And then coming back to the center and just pressing the hips back toward the heels, reaching the arms out overhead into prayer position. If we like, we can lift the fingers and just gently rock the wrists a little side to side, giving them a little massage after that hands and knees position. And then just spreading the hands, letting the rib cage sink down, the hips sink down. Let's take 3 deep breaths here, letting that breath expand and open. You might feel that breath expand through the upper back, down into the lower back. Expanding the lungs down into the rib cage and the belly. When we're ready on that next exhale, we're going to gently round it up and we're going to come back to the hands and knees. Let's again move that around a little bit. The head, the neck, the shoulders, the hips, the glutes. Again, finding whatever movement feels good to you in this moment. Maybe noticing any difference between the first time we did this freestyle flow and this time. And again, we're going to find that neutral spine position. Let's take one leg straight back behind us, the ball of the foot to the floor, and just gently pressing back into the ball of the foot, finding that stretch through the calf and Achilles. Taking a couple breaths here as we lengthen heel to the top of the head. And then we're going to take that back foot, turning it parallel to the short end of the mat, bringing the hand under the shoulder and rotating into kneeling side plank. We can keep the hand on the hip or we can reach the fingers up to the sky. And just lengthening from hand to hand, from the heel out through the top of the head, opening the chest. This is far more challenging than it looks, so finding that balance, the strength, and keeping that breath. Finding that stability. Another big inhale here. We can always look down if that's more stable and grounding, or we can look up, increasing our energy. On that next exhale, let's bring the hand down to the mat, bringing the knee back to the mat. You can stay right where you are. I'm just going to turn so that you can see me when I rotate to the camera. So the same thing here, neutral spine, long line, tailbone to the top of the head. The other leg comes straight back, again, ball of the foot into the floor, and just gently pressing back into that calf and Achilles stretch, maybe stretching through the foot a little bit as well. Again, that's a long line from the heel to the top of the head. Let the shoulders release down away from the ears. Continuing to send that breath into the entire body. Let's turn that foot parallel to the short end of the mat. Again, the hand under the shoulder, the knee under the hip. We're rotating open, bringing the hand to the hip. And again, the hand might stay on the hip. This is a challenge here, or extending the hand up to the sky. We're opening again through the chest, hand to hand. Change the gaze as you like. Lengthening from the heel out through the top of the head. Both sides of the torso are nice and long. Let's keep breathing and opening here. You can keep one direction with the gaze or can change the gaze. And again, this is a challenge here. Kneeling side plank, balance, core strength, flexibility. Let's take another big inhale here. And then exhale and bring that hand back down to the mat. Bring the knees back down to the mat. Again, let's sit back into that prayer position, reaching out through the fingers, pressing the palms, spreading them into the earth. This can be a comfortable position, so we can always widen the knees, or we can use a blanket between the thighs and the calves, or under the knees. Again, whatever makes you most comfortable. Let's take another couple deep breaths here. Again, maybe rocking the wrists side to side if that feels good. Or can curl the fingers in, stretching the tops of the wrists. And then rounding that back up to hands and knees. We're going to do one more thing before we move on. So coming back again to that neutral spine, we're going to take one arm, inhale, reaching out in front of us, and then exhale, tucking it through. Two ways to do this stretch. Hand can spread, and then we just rotate and look over the other shoulder as we drop the shoulder down toward the mat. So again, we can stay just like that. Or to come into the full thread the needle, we can turn the palm face up. We can slide the shoulder all the way down to the floor, make a fist with the other hand, and just breathe here as we let that upper body sink down. So this is a big stretch through the upper back, the shoulder blade, and it's one that we want to just breathe into. Maybe let that breath expand and open the upper back and shoulder blade. We can always change this arm position to keep pressing and rotating. All this rotation coming from the upper body. Again, let that sink down. Let that breath open into the rib cage. This is not an easy pose. And again, we can be in that partial rotation if that's a better place to be. Let's take a couple more deep breaths here. On the next exhale, we're going to gently press that up. The arm that we were tucking through comes out overhead, the other hand tucks in, and we just press the chest down toward the floor, turning the head. And this is a big stretch through the bicep, the chest, into the shoulder. And again, in any of these deep stretches, we want just a gentle tension, no pain, and deep breaths through that stretch. Another big inhale here, and then exhale, gently pressing up. Again, staying right where you are. I'm just going to rotate, so I'm turning toward the camera. We're going to do that same thing on the other side. So again, inhaling the arm in front of us. Exhale, tucking through. Again, option one, spread the hand, rotate, look over the shoulder, and sink the other shoulder toward the mat. Breathing here. Again, we can stay with that option or turn the palm face up, sliding the shoulder all the way down, the head to the mat, the fist to the mat. And again, that fist helps us to press down so that we rotate the upper body a little bit more. Again, nice big inhales and exhales, in through the nose, out through the nose. Let that breath sink down and aid us in that deeper stretch. Again, this might feel a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes one of the challenges of yoga is sitting still with our discomfort. Again, a gentle tension, no pain. If it's painful, we want to come out of that stretch or find that option with the partial rotation. Closing or opening the eyes as we breathe and relax into that big, deep stretch. Take another deep inhale and exhale here. Another big inhale. And then using that exhale to gently press up, sliding that arm back toward us. The same arm that tucked through comes out overhead. Bring that other arm closer. And then pressing the chest, turning the head. And again, that big stretch through the biceps, the chest, the shoulder. Gentle tension as we breathe into that stretch. Let the body release and relax. Another big inhale. And then as we exhale, gently pressing up, coming back to the center. So before we turn around, we're going to do a couple of restorative yoga poses here. So we're going to find that blanket. Restorative yoga often uses a number of props, and we're just using the blanket today because we probably don't have all the fancy props you would normally use in restorative yoga. So we're going to find that blanket, and the thickness of your fold can be adjusted at any point. And so I like to make mine a little bit thicker. You can also make it half of that size. And we're going to take that blanket and we're going to bring it onto the thighs. And we're going to slide it up to the hip crease, tucking it right up to the belly, and then lengthen the spine. And we're going to come into that same forward fold. Oh, I feel like it's slipping out. Prayer position that we were in before. Reaching the arms out overhead and then just letting the body sink down. You can have another blanket under the knees, between the legs, in between here, wherever that feels good. Just letting the upper body round over. And we're just breathing and relaxing here, letting that breath expand. It's expanding in 360 degrees. Expanding the chest, the lungs, down into the rib cage, into the belly, into the blanket. It's expanding the upper back into the lower back. If we like, we can slide the elbows closer to us. We can bring the hands together and let the chin come down. Let's take about 3 more deep breaths here. When we're ready, releasing and rounding that up. If we put a fold into our mat, we're going to take that fold out and we're going to do one more restorative pose here. So again, the blanket at the thickness that you prefer comes to the mat. And then we're going to lay down onto the blanket and we're going to bring the hip crease right up to that edge of the blanket, bringing the belly down on top. And we can adjust this as it feels good to you. So I'm going to take my glasses off. If you have glasses, they're definitely going to get in the way. So coming down on top of that blanket, so the belly is now on top of the blanket, so again the hip crease can come down to the lower edge, and then letting the upper body relax, tops of the feet to the floor. The forehead comes to the hands. You can also put another blanket underneath the hands if you like. Can adjust that blanket wherever that feels good to you. And then the head comes to the hands, and we're just going to let everything release and relax down to the mat. And as we breathe here, we're just going to focus on the breath. So again, a judge, not a judge, but a witness, not a critic, but just an observer, as we just observe that breath coming in and out of the body, and just observing where that breath goes. And as we breathe, maybe just letting the breath expand a little bit more each time. So forehead to the hands and just breathing here. Again, just breathing in through the nose, out through the nose, as we let that breath expand the upper back, the lower back, down into the hips, the glutes, the legs, into the chest, the rib cage. Let's take 3 more deep breaths here. Again, in through the nose, out through the nose. And when we're ready, we're just going to bring the elbows to the mat. We're going to walk the elbows toward the blanket. We're going to walk the feet and the hips toward the elbows as we gently lift up. And let's just press that back one more time. And then rounding up through the upper back when we're ready. We're going to change positions here, and we're going to refold our blanket. So in a moment, we'll come back to this same fold. But for now, we're going to change that blanket, and you can make this next bolster however you would like it. So this is going to be coming underneath our back along our spine. So we're going to take the blanket and we're going to roll it into a tube shape. So again, you can change the orientation of the folds in your blanket to make this longer or shorter. And you can always adjust this if it's not right for you when we get started. So we find that tube with the blanket, and we're going to bring that along our yoga mat or on our floor if we don't have a yoga mat. And we're going to come into a supported fish pose here. So we're going to come to seated right in front of that blanket. We're going to bring the blanket right up to the tailbone, to the lower back. And then we're going to slowly lower down so the spine comes along that blanket. You can always shift, bend the knees, and move up that blanket or down the blanket a little bit. And then we're going to straighten the legs out. We're going to open the arms up to a goalpost position. And the legs can be straight, pointing out through the toes. Give them a little wiggle. Or the feet can fall out if that's more comfortable. So finding where that's best for you, legs together or slightly opening. And then just kind of squeezing the shoulder blades together, pressing back into the arms, into the floor. Feeling that support underneath the head, the neck, the spine, the low back. Fish pose is a chest opener, and as we breathe here, you can think about that breath expanding up and out like it's making a big rainbow bursting out of your chest. And again, we just want to let that breath freely flow in and out, in and out. Focusing on the movement of the breath. If it's uncomfortable to have the legs straight here, you can always just bend the knees and bring the feet to the floor instead. Again, finding what feels best for you as we take a few more deep breaths here. As we take a couple more breaths here, you can also maybe just smile. Give yourself a secret smile that only you can see. And we can stay with this as long as we like. When we're ready, we're going to bend one knee, and then we're going to roll toward the straight leg, rolling gently off of that blanket, bending the knees, bringing the hands to the floor, and slowly pressing that up back to a seated position. So we're going to refold the blanket. We're going to do a couple things without the blanket, and then we'll come back to the blanket in a moment. So unrolling the tube that we made, and then refolding the blanket. When we come back to this blanket, we're going to be using this underneath the low back. So you can always make that blanket bigger or smaller, thicker or not. So again, folding that back probably where you had it when we started, and then just setting that to the side for the moment. Keeping it within reach, and then we're going to take our time to slowly lower down to the mat. Can hold on to the hamstrings if we like, and make any adjustments we need to, coming down to the floor, maybe lifting the hips and finding that neutral spine position. Feet shoulder width, hip width apart, and just opening the palms face up, spreading the feet into the earth, just taking a couple deep breaths here. In through the nose, out through the nose, and just noticing the breath, again as witness but not as judge. And when we're ready, we're going to walk the feet closer together, bringing the arms straight out to the sides. And we're just going to start to gently rock the knees side to side. That can be just a couple of inches, keeping the knees together, rocking through the low back, giving the low back a little bit of a massage. As we continue to breathe and rock the knees here, our range of motion might start to get a little bit bigger. We're keeping both shoulders on the mat as we rotate the lower body. So earlier when we did that thread the needle, we were finding the rotation in the upper body. Now we're finding the rotation in the lower body. And then on the next one, let's inhale, center. And then as we exhale, letting both knees come to the side. Now you might stop at any point. You might even grab the blanket and bring the blanket outside the thigh. Again, arms open, shoulders to the mat, letting the knees sink. And we're finding that stretch through the lower body, through the top of the hip, into the low back and glute. Taking a couple deep breaths here. Again, all of these stretches, just a gentle tension, no pain, letting that breath expand and open. Letting the breath aid our stretches. We can stay just like this in this simple spinal twist, or that top leg can come higher. We can bring the hand to the outer thigh, and we can put a little pressure on the outer thighs. We let that rotate a little bit more. We might turn and look down the arm behind us if we like that option, and just bringing a little bit deeper stretch into that low back, hip, and glute. Again, nice deep inhales and exhales. The knee can come higher toward the chest, changing that stretch a little bit, or the knee can slide down toward the other knee, just finding any adjustment that feels good to you. Again, that opposite shoulder stays on the mat, finding all the rotation in the lower body. Let's take 2 more deep breaths here. Then on that next exhale, gently releasing, bringing the feet to the floor, the knees back to the center. Finding that neutral spine position, perhaps by lifting and lowering the hips. Bringing the arms back out to the sides, the feet and the knees together, inner thighs together. And again, just slowly rocking that side to side, massaging the low back, continuing to breathe. And then coming back to the center with a big inhale. As we exhale, letting those knees gently come to the other side this time. Again, we can slide the blanket underneath the outer thigh if we like that option. Stopping at whatever point where we feel that stretch to that front top of the hip, maybe down into the side a little bit toward the lower back. Letting that breath sink down into the lower body. Again, we can continue to breathe here, or we can take that top knee higher. We can bring the hand to the outer thigh. We can put a little pressure there as we let that rotation sink a little bit more toward the earth. We can turn to look down that opposite arm if we like. Again, breathing here in that low back, hip, and glute stretch. Maybe the knee comes a little higher toward the chest, changing that stretch, or lower toward the other leg. Again, making whatever adjustments help you to find the best stretch for you at this moment. Always listening to what the body needs and knowing that from one day to the next, the same pose might feel a little bit different than it did the day before. Letting that breath open and expand down into the lower body. We're going to take a couple more deep breaths here. On the next exhale, gently relaxing, bringing the feet back to the earth, feet shoulder width, hip width apart, neutral spine. So we're going to be finding that blanket. When we're ready, we're going to lift the hips and we're going to slide that blanket underneath the low back, the sacrum. And again, positioning that where it feels good to you. As you lower down onto the blanket, if you need to reposition, just lift the hips. If you need to refold, you can just turn to the side and press up, refold the blanket, and then come back to the same position, lift the hips, slide it under. This can also be done with a yoga block or with a higher bolster to lift the hips more. That's again always your choice. When we're ready, we're going to bring the hands to the tops of the hips, the front of the hips, the hip flexors. Just let that relax and release here, taking a couple deep breaths. The eyes could be closed or open as you like. When we're ready, we're going to take one arm up above the head, palm is face up. And then we're going to extend the other leg nice and long. And we're just letting that hip drop down a little bit. So we're stretching through the top of the hip and we're releasing the psoas. So we've got the hip flexors. The psoas is a deeper muscle. It's the muscle that connects the upper body and the lower body. In fact, the only muscle that connects the upper body and the lower body. That psoas muscle helps us move around. It can also start to tighten up. So we're letting that psoas just release and relax. Taking a couple deep breaths here. The hand can just rest on the hip. Let that breath expand and open. Let's take another big inhale here. And then as we exhale, bringing the hand back to the hip, another big inhale. And then let's exhale and drag the heel along the floor, And we're going to straighten that out again and drag it back in a few more times. Again, inhale, lift and set the heel down. Exhale, drag that in. Let's do that 2 more times. And then exhale, drag that heel in, lifting the leg and crossing that ankle across the thigh, gently opening that knee to open the hip. The hand might gently press the inner thigh. And again, just taking a couple deep breaths here, in through the nose, out through the nose. Letting that breath expand and open, letting that stretch, release, and relax. And then gently releasing and bringing that foot back to the earth. The hands are again on the front of the hips. Taking a nice big inhale and exhale here. On the next inhale, we're going to reach that other arm up overhead, palm face up. And then let that leg, opposite leg, extend out long, let the hip drop down. Again, breathing here. Releasing that deep psoas muscle. Letting the breath expand down into the belly. The psoas is also associated with our freeze, flight, or flee reactions through our nervous system. So by releasing that psoas, we're helping to calm the nervous system. Again, continuing to let that release and relax. Let's take a couple more deep breaths here. And then as we exhale, bringing that arm back down, hand to the hip. Another big inhale. Exhaling, dragging that heel in toward the glute. Begin straightening that leg out. Exhale, dragging the heel in toward the glute. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, drag that in. Let's do that 2 more times. On that next one, exhale, dragging the heel in, lifting it toward the chest, and then bringing the heel, crossing it across the thigh, gently opening the knee to open the hip. Again, the hand can gently press the inner thigh to open that rotation. The other hand can rest on the hip or open out to the side. And again, just taking a few deep breaths here. In through the nose, out through the nose, letting that breath expand and open into the belly. And gently releasing, bringing that knee into the chest, the other knee into the chest. We can hold on to the hamstrings or the shins, and if it feels good, we can stay still, or we can gently rock that a little side to side, massaging across the low back. And then coming back to the center, bringing one foot at a time up to the sky for a simple inversion. Arms can relax by the sides or up overhead in a diamond shape. We can point and flex the feet a few times if we like. And then just relaxing into that simple inversion. This is also a really nice pose. It can be done against the wall. Same thing, blanket underneath the low back as a little bolster. And then bringing the legs up the wall like you're sitting against the wall. Again, nice big inhales and exhales, in through the nose, out through the nose. And then slowly bending the knees, bringing one foot at a time back down to the earth. We'll bring the feet together, opening the knees. So the bottoms of the feet come together, letting the knees open out, opening the hips. The hands can rest on the inner thighs, putting a little bit of pressure there, a little bit of weight. And as we breathe in this reclining butterfly, or also known as reclining bound angle, you can continue to just let that release and relax. Again, hands can stay here. They can open out to the sides, palms face up. They can make a diamond shape over the head. Or if we like, we can bring the hands to the belly. And as we breathe here, let's think about inflating the belly like a balloon. So we're going to inhale and pull that inhale all the way down into the belly, let it expand, and then exhale and let that breath come all the way back up and out. So trying that belly breath a few times here. Inhale, expand, exhale and empty. Taking a couple more deep breaths here. Again, either that nice deep belly breath or just letting the breath expand 3 parts, chest, rib cage, belly. Just a nice deep inhale and exhale. One more inhale here. And then on the next exhale, slowly bringing the knees back together, the feet back to the earth. We're going to lift the hips and gently slide that blanket out from underneath the low back. We can bring that blanket down underneath the calves at the ankles for support. We can roll it up and bring it underneath the knees when we straighten the legs. Or we can slide that blanket underneath the head to support the neck and the head. If you have multiple blankets, you can do all of those things that I just suggested. So finding that position where it's comfortable. One more time, let's bring the knees one at a time into the chest, holding onto the hamstrings or onto the shins. Staying still here or gently rocking that a little side to side. Continuing to breathe. We're going to come into Shavasana, final relaxation, and what's sometimes referred to as corpse pose, referring to that rejuvenation of the life cycle. So again, if we like, we can use extra blankets to bolster under the knees, under the feet and the calves. Can also place a blanket on top of the belly or use that blanket as a blanket to keep yourself warm. So again, whatever extra support you'd like to add. When we're ready, we'll straighten one leg at a time. We'll let the knees fall out to the sides, the feet fall out to the sides, the arms open to the sides, palms face up. Again, I'm going to remove my glasses because we'll do a little bit of massage on the face. And so this position should be a comfortable position, making whatever adjustments you need to make. And just letting ourselves release and relax, sinking down into the earth beneath us. The inhale and the exhale, nice and even. And you can think about that inhale and exhale moving like a big circular motion, inhaling and exhaling. Again, letting the arms open out to the sides. Letting each inhale fill us up. And the breath seep into the nooks and crannies. Each inhale filling us with life, energy. Each exhale releasing any stress, any doubt, any anxiety. Focusing on the breath and just letting the mind release and relax as well. If you find your mind starting to get busy, just notice, again, noticing without judging. And then come back to that breath. Again, if busy thoughts come back in, just recognize that they're there. And then set them aside, knowing that they'll still be there, or maybe they'll disappear as we breathe and release. We might wiggle the toes and just bring the breath down into the toes on the next inhale. And then exhale, let the toes be still. Maybe a little wiggle through the legs, knees. And then bring that inhale down into the legs. And then exhaling and letting that release and find stillness. Maybe bringing some wiggle into the hips, the glutes, the low back. Sending that next breath down into the hips, the glutes, the low back. And then letting that release and relax. Bring some wiggle into the belly, the rib cage. Bring that next breath down into the belly and the rib cage. And then letting the belly and the rib cage release and relax with the breath. Bring some wiggle into the fingers, the hands, the wrists. Inhaling into the hands. And then exhale, let them release and relax. Bring some wiggle into the shoulders, the chest. Letting that breath expand the shoulders, the chest. And then releasing, relaxing, finding stillness. Bring some movement into the upper back, the shoulder blades. And then bringing that next breath into the upper back. And letting that exhale release and relax. A little movement into the head, the neck. And then bringing that next breath into the head and the neck. And then gently releasing, relaxing. Bring some movement into the face, the jaw. Opening the eyes, the mouth, sticking out the tongue. And then releasing the face. Letting those inhales and exhales continue to move the breath in and out of the entire body. If we like, we can bring the hands up and bringing the fingertips to the third eye, to the space brow center, and just giving that a little massage. Maybe to the bridge of the nose, especially if you wear glasses. Moving those fingers out along the brow to the temples and making little circles with the fingers. Moving the fingers down to where the jawbones connect, and a little up and down, or a little forward and back, or little circles massaging where the jawbones meet. And then opening the arms out to the sides again. Taking a few more deep inhales and exhales here. Finding the deepest and the longest inhale of your day so far.